Anatomy and physiology is a discipline or a branch within biology, the study of life. While I don't expect you to remember everything that you learned in biology, there are some things that maybe, perhaps, might look just a little bit familiar. One of those things that may look familiar to you is a diagram like this that shows the levels of organization within an organism. The cell is the basic unit of life, but there are parts that are smaller than a cell, and there are parts that are bigger than a cell. And we will talk about these throughout the course of anatomy and physiology. We'll start with atoms, though there are subatomic particles that are even smaller than atoms. We'll start with an atom, which atoms join together to form molecules. Molecules join together to form macromolecules, proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and nucleic acids. These macromolecules will join together to form organelles, the parts of a cell that carry out different functions for that cell. These are things like endoplasmic reticulum, the nucleus, the cell membrane, or the mitochondria. Cells join together for common functions to form a tissue. One or more different types of tissue will join together to form an organ. Organs join together to form an organ system, which carries out a specific function within the organism. We have lots of different organ systems that together work to maintain homeostasis and carry out other functions of life within our organism. The example that we see here is the digestive system. Within anatomy and physiology, we'll base our units around systems. We'll talk mostly about the system itself and the organs that make up that system, both in their structure and in their function, how the different organs work together to accomplish the function of the system. We'll talk about the different types of tissues that make up the organs, and we'll occasionally talk about the levels of organization that are smaller than a tissue. So getting back to the example here, we'll talk about the digestive system. The digestive system's function is to break down food, absorb the nutrients, and then eliminate the waste. Within that system, the organ shown here, the stomach, will begin to break down the food physically as well as start to digest some of the different macromolecules that are found within the food. So in order to do that, the stomach is made up of different types of tissues. Two types of tissues that help make up the stomach are glandular epithelium, which secrete things like acid and enzymes, and smooth muscle, which helps churn or move the food within the stomach and then out of the stomach. We may talk about cells, for example, the chief or parietal cells that are the ones that are actually secreting the acids and the enzymes within the glandular epithelium. We probably won't go any smaller than that in this case, but that's just one example. If we wanted another example, let's pick everyone's favorite organelle, the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. So the mitochondria is nicknamed the powerhouse of the cell because it's responsible for producing energy. What needs a lot of energy? Your muscles. Muscles consume a lot of energy. So our muscle cells have lots and lots of mitochondria so that we can be producing lots and lots of energy. These cells form skeletal muscle tissue. Skeletal muscle tissue makes up different organs, muscles. So for example, your biceps or your quadriceps muscles. These organs, muscles, come together in the organ system of the muscular system for the function of moving the body. So what are anatomy and physiology? They really go hand in hand, but they can be separated as well. Anatomy is the structure of a body part. It's what these structures are and how they're organized. The physiology is the function of those body parts. It's what they do and it's how they do it. We'll see throughout the course that structure and function are very closely connected. Most of the critical thinking that we do in this class will be thinking about how a structure, what this body part is, contributes to what it does. So if we look at the example of the mitochondria and the skeletal muscle system, we may say that a muscle cell has a lot of mitochondria. That's its structure. Its structure is that it has a lot of this one specific type of organelle. But the function, the importance of that structure is that it's able to produce lots of energy because the muscles need a lot of energy. So we'll talk about it throughout the course. We'll talk about the shape of things, the size of things, where they're located, what types of tissues make up different organs, and why those are important. If you figure out the what and you figure out the why, connecting them is really what's important when we're talking about medicine, research, development of different technologies. That's what we really need to connect are the structure and the function, what they are and what they do, how they're organized, and how that helps them carry out the function that they have. There are lots of different applications for anatomy and physiology, but the one we'll talk about the most is in the context of medicine. So I just wanted to give a brief history of medicine. Medicine really began with observations and experimentation. People would look at different injuries or different illnesses, the times that the body didn't work, in order to see how it should work. So they would look at these different things that were going wrong. They would look at when the body does work how it's supposed to. They would look at how it healed itself. They would see what helped in the healing process, things like herbs. It began a lot with magic, with superstition, with local healings. People just trying different things to see what would really work. Early civilizations, thousands of years ago, included Chinese and Indian medicine. These are both the foundation for modern medicine and they continue on their own. They continue, when we talk about them, when we're talking about our modern medicine, we call it Western medicine. When we're talking about some of these other medicinal approaches, such as Chinese or Indian medicine, they are usually called alternative medicine or holistic medicine. And so they have a little bit of a different focus. They focus on more natural solutions and they focus on the body as a whole. We're going to talk mostly about modern medicine or Western medicine. This continued as people continued to observe and experiment, but began using a more scientific process. So we've talked about the scientific process or the scientific method in most of our science classes, I'm sure. And so we know that science often eliminates the wrong answers so that it can find the right answers. We see what doesn't work so that we can see what does work. And we use a systematic approach that other people can repeat and that other people can easily follow. Hippocrates is known as the father of modern medicine. This was about 24-ish hundred years ago, so about 400 BC or BCE. And so Hippocrates lived in ancient Greece, and the ancient Greek and Roman civilizations really began to seek more answers through careful observation, through experimentation, through systematically using the scientific process in order to find some of the answers to things that they were noticing, things they were observing. They decided that it was important to begin naming different structures, to figure out and document their locations, their functions, how they worked with one another. And so this is really where we got our basis of modern medicine. So the language that we use when we're in anatomy or when we're talking about other medical settings is largely based on Latin, the language of the Romans, and on Greek. It's really important that we have a standard language or a standard method of speaking within the medical community. This ensures the best care for patients and it makes sure that we all know what we're talking about. So this medical terminology is used whether you're a nurse, a doctor, an athletic trainer, a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, a speech pathologist, a researcher. It doesn't matter. We're all using the same language. It's great too because it's standardized. So if we're using the prefix epi, which comes from Greek, epi means the same thing whether you're talking about the heart or you're talking about a bone. Epi always means the same thing. And so it really helps us to have a standard language that is based on Latin and Greek. And so that's just a little introduction to anatomy and physiology.